Hello and welcome to this video covering some of the smaller features in the version 6 Accura release. So these are things which are not perhaps significant enough in their own right to dedicate to their own video, but are nonetheless important little changes you need to be aware of, and for some of you will make a difference in the way you use the system. So I'm going to start with a feature we added to the contact record, which gives you the ability to CC or blind CC in other people. And what this is when you email anything to this contact, if you put in a list of email addresses into here or here, then those other recipients will automatically be CC'd in. And this was a requested feature by someone working for a local government who needed their supervisor copied in to all the emails that they received. So it is a list, so it can be more than one email address. So if I put in trev@anywhere.com and I use a semicolon, I can then put in another email address, alan@anywhere.com, and so on. So whenever I was to email that person, these other two people would also receive the email. Now, if you don't want the main recipient, in this case Alan, to know that the others have been copied in, then you would put it into the blind CC area here. So whenever I send an email now, those other people will be blind copied in, so Alan himself will not even know that that's happened. So that's quite a useful feature if you've got a kind of hierarchy in amongst your client base. Okay, what I'm going to show you now is the ability to reassign tab data to other tabs when you delete the tab. So what do we mean by that? Let's have a look at our list of tabs to start off with. So we have a bunch of the standard tabs, and we also have one down here called custom, which I've added myself. So when I start a quote, for example, you will see I have a custom tab and it has a default value, and I can edit that value. Now, what if I've got a situation where I've been doing that for the past few weeks or months, and now we're going to go through a system cleanup and we want to combine and purge some of the tabs we don't need anymore. Before, you couldn't do this without losing data, or in fact it might have restricted you from doing it at all. What we've done now is we've added a feature whereby if I now go to delete that custom tab, it will say, okay, this tab has data recorded against it. What do you want to do with that data? So we can reassign it to another tab, we can destroy it, or we can cancel the delete. If we destroy it, all the data linked with that tab will be lost, so that might not be desirable. However, what we might want to do is reassign it to another tab. So it says, okay, which tab do you want to reassign it to? And I'm going to say the special tab. So I'm deleting my custom tab and reassigning all of the data to another tab. Click OK, and it basically tells me this is what it's going to do. And once I do this, it's not reversible. Do I want to continue? So I can say yes to that, and that's done. So custom is removed, and all of the data will now appear under the special tab when somebody opens up the quote. So that's a pretty useful feature to help you maintain all your tabs and keep them nice and neat and tidy. Okay, what I'm going to cover now is some personalization that you can do with Accura. So you'll notice in Accura, in a lot of the screens, we have this panel where all the buttons reside. For some time now, you've been able to control the color of this panel, so it doesn't have to be gray. It can be another color of your choosing. You'll also notice in many of the windows you have these header bars with icons and so on. So this is a kind of new look and feel we've been working towards. So what I'm going to show you is how you can customize these to your own personal preferences. So let's go into defaults, and you'll notice here we have header box color, header text color, and button panel color. So this is your button panel, this is your header box, and this is your header text. So I might decide that I want to choose a different color for that, and immediately it's going to show me what that looks like. If I need to reset at any point back to defaults, click on the reset button here. So let's choose something a bit more respectable. So let's go for a maybe a dark green. Okay, and let's change this panel color as well. So let's go for maybe something like a burnt orange. Okay, that'll do. Okay, so not to everyone's taste, I'll admit. If I OK that, you can now see how that's going to look in the program. So there we have our burnt orange, which isn't too bad. And if I open up something with a header, there you'll see my dark green. You can also change the color of the text so that if the white no longer shows up on the background, then you could change it to black or grey or red or whatever you want it to be. So that's a pretty useful feature just for personalizing the system to yourself. While I'm talking about customizing the look and feel, what some of you may not know is that you can modify the font in Accura. Now the font we typically use as a default is called Seago UI, and that is the font that Microsoft Office has used for some time, although they do change it with each new revision. If you want to change the window font, you can come down to Window and Font menu, and you can change the size and the font and whether it's italic and so on and so forth. I wouldn't advise making too drastic a changes, so if you went from 8 point to 14 point, for example, some of the screens are going to really struggle to fit all of the text in on the buttons and so forth. But we've started using a font here called Roboto, and it's quite a nice look. It works really nicely in 8 or 9 point, so if you do want the font a little bit bigger as well, then go for the 9 point. And then if you click OK, it will change the fonts. You can see the menu just briefly change there, but you'll see that the windows look nice and clear. It's a very sharp looking font. So it's as easy as that. Now Roboto may not appear in your font list, and that's because it's not installed on your PC by default. But it is a free font and it is a Google font, so it is a high quality font. So you'll need to download Roboto if you want to use it, and you'll find it here on the fonts.google.com page. And we tend to use Open Sans and Roboto quite a lot, so you just download them and then double click it once it's downloaded and it will install on your PC. Now if you're running on a server environment, then you should only need to install that once and it will be available to all of your remote desktop sessions. So that's worth knowing, Roboto, and I think it's quite a nice looking font and just sharpens things up a little bit more compared to Seago UI. So I'm going to go back to my defaults now and reset those colors. Otherwise I might just get a migraine. Okay, so that covers off the coloring and personalization. Okay, so what I'm going to cover next is a range of small little features that have been requested by customers either at our client forum events or just by emailing in. Those good ideas get added to our wish list and get included in upgrades. So they can be quite small little things, but they make people's lives easier. So this one is relates to the private tab in a quote or an order, and what we've done is we've added this little icon when the tab is populated. So it's really useful, particularly with the RFQ workflow, where a sales rep may enter some notes for the estimator onto the private text box, and the estimator processes the RFQ and he doesn't realize that there are some notes on the private tab. So unless he goes and looks, he wouldn't actually know, and he's going to miss those important notes. So now if the private tab has any notes, then it will receive this little icon, and then the estimator will be alerted to it and click on it and see what the sales rep has tried to communicate. So that's quite a nice little feature. Another change you'll notice here in the quote screen is the markup profile is selectable on the front tab, and this is so that you are fully aware of the markup being utilized when you first select the client, so you don't have to get all the way to the end, and you can change it at this point as well to a different markup profile if you have permissions to do so. So this is quite a good little touch just to ensure you know what you're working with. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to show you is a way of batch assigning markup profiles to customers. So again, this is something that was raised at a client forum. What if you want to change the markup profiles for a batch of customers in one go? So the way we can do this now is if you come to your client browse, and let's say you want to tag a bunch of clients, and then right click. What we've done is we've enhanced this feature here called account status. So this feature was added a few versions ago, and it gives you the ability to put customers on stop, take them off stop, change their rep. So when a sales rep leaves and a new rep joins, you can reassign the rep to customers in a batch mode, change the tax code, change their GL code, or now change the markup profile as well. So you can assign all of the tagged clients to this markup profile, click OK, and it will go away and do that for you. So it's a very good way of doing it en masse. Otherwise you'd have to go into each different client and change their markup profile individually, and obviously that could take some time. Another way of doing the same thing the other way around is if you go into your markup profile maintenance, click on the profile you want to use, and then click on the clients tab, and you can add and remove clients here just by tagging them in the list, and then click OK, and they will be assigned to this markup, in which case, in this particular case, it's B for preferred clients. So another useful set of tools just for maintaining the database there. Now, while we're talking about markups, there's a major new feature which is covered in a separate video, which is the ability to create what's called a component markup. Now, component markup is literally a way of marking up every single element of a quote individually. So instead of marking up by department, or instead of marking up based on value add or profit and so on, you can literally have a default markup for each element of the quote and customize that within the quote. So make sure you check out that video. That is a separate video, as it's a major new feature. Okay, moving on to RFQs. Another feature that was requested at one of the client forums was relating to the preview feature. So if I come into an RFQ or I start an RFQ, we have this preview button which will generate the PDF and show you it on screen. And what the customer in question requested was that this was forced, that actually we always want to check the preview. We don't want to forget to check it, so we want to trigger it automatically. So you can now control this in the Options tab, and you would just tick this box here, Force PDF Preview before Save. So what that means is that when I insert a new RFQ and I select my customer and I start populating some details here in the specs, just some printing details and material details, for example, and I give it a title. Now before, if I clicked OK, that would be it. That would go straight through to the estimator and he would be able to start working on that. If I click preview manually, then obviously I can see it on screen and check it. What if I forget to do that? So if I just click OK now, it will generate the preview. It will then open up my PDF window for me to check the content of my RFQ. And you'll notice it gives me two options. Do I want to make changes to the spec of my RFQ, or do I want to save it? So if I click make changes, then it will return me back to my RFQ to carry on and make those changes. And if I click save, then it will just continue to save and it will go through to the estimator for processing. That basically allows you to enforce checking of the RFQ before it goes through. So hopefully you'll find that useful. Okay, the next thing I'm going to show you is the ability to change the from address of delivery notifications. So typically when we print delivery notes, we can send an email notification to the client. So we're going to print our dispatch notes and labels, and at the same time we want to email those clients and say, we thought you'd like to know your job is now leaving the factory. So that makes you look really slick. Now what you can now control, which you couldn't before, is the from address of that email. So instead of it coming from you, the logged in user, you might want it to come from, say, dispatch at your domain name. So it's not coming from an individual, it's just coming from the dispatch department. So a small thing, but something that was requested. Another thing that was requested was the ability to make a user inactive. So let's say somebody goes away on maternity leave, or somebody leaves the company completely, but you don't want to remove them from the database, you just want to deactivate them. So we can now do this. So go into Setup and Security and Users, and click on the user you want to deactivate, and you can just tick this box down here, inactive user. Now what that means is that they will not be able to log in to the system at all, so it will block their login when they try to access the system. It also means that they won't appear in the list of users for remote data capture as well. Okay, another feature we've added recently is the ability to raise a delivery note to a supplier. So let's take a scenario where you're printing the job in-house, but you're sending it out to an external finishing company to complete the job. So if I just raise a delivery note here for a random order, by default what it's going to do is bring through the delivery address on the order. But what if I don't want it to go to the customer yet? It's going to go to my trade finishing house, and then it's going to either come back to me for me to dispatch, or it's going to be shipped directly from the finishing house to my end client. You see now you have this deliver to option. If I click supplier, then now what I can do is choose a supplier who I want to ship this job too. Now the beauty of this is that you'll still get your packing slip, you'll still get your labels, and you'll still also get your shipping integration with either your own driver using Accura Pod or with a courier using our Easy Post integration. So all of that will just continue to work as normal, and it'll all be fully integrated. So that's just by choosing client or supplier from the drop list there. Okay, the last point I'm going to cover in this video is change of contact names. So what happens if somebody changes their name? How is that going to affect the orders and quotes, etc., already in the system? So if we have a lady, let's say, who gets married, so Miss Karen Wilson, and she gets married and she changes her name to Mrs. Karen Spencer. Okay, so Mrs. Karen Spencer, click OK, and the system detects that the contact name is changed, and it asks if you want to synchronize this change to all the linked transactions. If you answer yes, it will go off and scan all the quotes, orders, delivery notes, proof notes, invoices, etc. linked to Karen Spencer, and it will ensure that the contact name is fully synchronized from Wilson to the new name Spencer. Okay, so that just about rounds up this video. I hope you found some of these things useful. There are some other smaller things that we didn't cover in this video contained in the release notes, so please do get a chance to read those. You'll find them on the help menu under what's new, and that will cover off all of the new major features, and there's also a technical document called release notes that goes with that, which covers some of the more minor features and the technical details. So thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed.